Hey, Spook. I ran out of lemons for the Coronas, so I just put a Carlton in your beer. Welcome to the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And I'm Big Cox.
Spook.
Yes.
Are you pleasantly surprised at how easily we smashed the might of the Giants?
I'm pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoy a casual game of football.
What do you think is the difference? We've had two smashings this year. Why have we smashed two teams and then effectively struggled against most of the others for large parts of the game?
I don't know.
I can tell you. But
Why don't you tell me?
In the coaches' vote, so these are the only votes I looked up. I
know where you're going now.
Yeah, I did email the AFL to check on the Brownlow votes. They wouldn't give them to me. There's only two games in the coaches' votes where our ruckman has placed.
Which ones would they be?
So Coxie got a perfect 10 this week.
And he is. He's better than Bo Derek.
Yep. And against Port Adelaide, Darcy Cameron got 8.
Did he?
Only two games where our ruckman has gotten votes.
And we smashed them?
And we smashed both teams.
Do you think the Brains Trust will pick up on this?
Well, I mean, to be fair, we haven't had anyone over 6'2" for about 6 weeks.
That's a fair point.
But I thought it was really interesting. McRae mentioned it in his press conference about Cox's aerial presence and shit like that.
It was like watching Superman.
Oh, the way he drifts in, you can just see he runs with intent. I never saw Grundy do that. Cameron's a good mark, but I don't see him do that either. He sort of really pounces. It's like, that's it. This is mine. I am running and bang.
Oh, no, he certainly hit a few quite hard. He cleaned up that bloke when he had that mark in the forward line that was good. We should know the opposition team's players. Do you know any of the GWS players?
The one you ran into was Lockie Keith.
Was he?
Yeah.
Really? It wasn't it?
No. Keith's been gone a little while.
Has he?
Yeah. Keithy George.
Did anyone mention it?
I don't know. But it really shows the difference that, we lost Cameron and Cox, and then we went to play Brisbane, and McStay had to pinch it in the ruck. So it really shows the difference that even the neutralising presence is in the middle, but having one that's actually dominant and scarily dominant, it totally changed the whole synergy in that centre. We've done really well with clearances, but to actually win taps to advantage, to have a guy who can take marks, to have a guy... he even did some the groundwork, which is really cool, It totally... I don't know. It elevates the team and their performance.
Oh, yeah. You look at the couple of times that Ash Johnson went into the ruck. The chalk and cheese aspect was just massive. And that's not to have any slight against Ash Johnson.
It was a part-time ruck, yeah.
He's pinch hitting in there. But the difference in the performance, though, if you had to measure that role, was fucking enormous.
Yeah, we've been saying this for years. Cox is not a forward, he's a ruckman. We keep trying to make him a forward, but this is a guy who should have been a ruckman from day one. And they didn't do it because they had about 14 other players who could ruck, or they felt they could ruck. But you look at him, and we've said this before because I recall talking about it, when he's actually given license to sort of roam and he can run out without being blocked on his leads or held by free opponents and all that, he's an impossible force to stop. It really is, a guy... You can see his basketball background too, the way he leaps the ball, the way he stretches
spins the ball in his finger.
Yeah, No, but I recall there was one time, in the replay, when he took that mark and he kicked from 50, and they said he doesn't mark like a Australian rules, or someone who's brought up on Australian rules would lift their knee and go for the specky. He actually leaps like a basketball with both feet in the air as he jumps.
Oh, and we've said it before, but the time he extends his frame plus the length of his arms, you're either going to have to concede that he's going to mark it, or he's going to spill it and bring it to the ground, or he's going to have his arms chopped. You can't go up really all that often and physically spoil him.
Yeah. Oh, it's impossible. He's the only one...
you pass out from altitude, lack of oxygen.
Nick Dagos got 41 possessions. He actually only 6 votes, coaches' votes, which actually, I don't think it was a surprise. He didn't seem to have the same impact, but everyone was up and running.
It's funny how you measure his performances though now, because some of the things he did were absolutely sublime.
Yeah.
But you just expect it though. You're not really going to go ooh ah. You do go ooh ah, but it's just par for the course for him. Some of that stuff, we talked about it before that game, that handball behind his head that he,
yeah,
I think it was little Titch was there, and it's just that awareness of just knowing where someone is. And it's the same with a lot of his passing. It's just pinpoint accurate. And Josh isn't all that far behind at times too. They're just a joy to watch, those two.
Yeah, I thought the other one who was, well, he was a beast, was the Goey. The Goey was just sort of everywhere. He showed like some brute strength. He showed some deft touch. There's that charming little fucking handball. It was just sort of a loop. If it only went about a metre, but it was just enough space. I think it was Mitchell to just sort of break clear. But in terms of performance like that, it's really hard to talk about anything or single players outside of Cox, because they were just that dominant.
No, it was a great performance across the board. And to be fair to GWS, they haven't won too many games this year, but as they mentioned during the commentary and stuff, they've always been in there, close. Yeah. They've fought games out. And to be totally blown off the park, it probably says a fair bit where we are when we're not losing, but we've lost a few, walk-up starts as well, that the second-tier players are filling that void brilliantly.
Well, you look at, we lost Frampton unexpectedly going into this game. And then, no disrespect to Frampton, because we've been fans of Frampton, and we're the ones who told everyone how good he was going to be. Cox was a massive upgrade on any of the ruck options that we've had in the last... since Jolly, so
you've got Cameron coming back and Frampton coming back. Well, Frampton's
what about Kruger?
Well, he broke again in the VFL, didn't he?
I heard he did his shoulder. I don't know.
I think the thing is with the medical reports that they might as well just start reporting when he doesn't do his shoulder. That'd be just probably a little bit more efficient. Look, it's a shame if he's injured again. I think everyone had great hopes for him to get some consistency, but he just seems incredibly fragile. I don't think he's like soft or anything like that, but it just...
he's definitely not soft. He
just keeps breaking.
I don't know. Internally they might have an assessment where they're going, that's it. His body's just not up to it. You look at Charlie Curnow, and I'm not saying Kruger's as good as Curnow, but Curnow had 2 years effectively out of the game, and now he looks unstoppable. So with Kruger, and we talked about it, you brought it up last time, he was rushed in because of just need. If they can get his body right, it would be good if they have the luxury to just say, look, you're just going to stay in the VFL for 4 to 8 weeks, because you just need to get some miles in the leg, and you need to get some assurance.
Conditioning.
Yeah. I don't know, but again, I don't know where he's at in terms of, obviously the club will have a much more insightful evaluation about his durability and all that sort of stuff, but it's always a shame when you get players who just repeatedly break. Sean Rusling was a really a huge talent years ago.
Lee Walker.
Well, Lee Walker. I recall they talked about Walker being an absolute talent, but I recall Malthouse when he was still I can't remember. He might have still been at West Coast after they let Walker go, and he described Walker's knees as just time bombs. He goes, they're just waiting to go, and that's effectively what they did. Anyway, sort of getting off topic a little bit. Elliott, nice return to form.
Yep, very welcome.
Ginnivan, some real... he kicked that typical opportunistic goal, the one where he dropped the chest mark, and then he picked it up and he snapped.
Covered the snap, yep.
But actually likes a lot of the other stuff. He did that beautiful punch.
Oh, that was superb.
Over the
hill. And
just the soccer, I know he probably wasn't going for goal, but just to try and gain meterage, it really showed, he's been a little bit more, not a little bit more, but it's very team-oriented he's trying to fit into, whereas last year they had all the distraction of too high. Speaking of too high, what do you think of the too high rule? So Hill gets his head torn off, and the defence now is, he ducked into it or he dropped his knees.
At the start of the game, there was some GWS bloke that, was it Lockie Keefe? Might have been Keefe.
Yeah, probably Keefe.
He keeps bobbing up. He had his head taken off, and I've texted the boys saying, well, that's pretty much guaranteed that Ginnivan's going to have a field day today, if that's the case. Obviously tongue-in-cheek. But then when Hill had his head... I think the Hill one was worse than the GWS one, and it was called play on, or they're disputing the fact it was holding the ball or something.
Well, Jordan Lewis said it's a free. He goes, that should be a free every day of the week.
Absolutely. Because if you're going to choose between the two, whether it's prior opportunity and holding the ball, or you're serious about protecting players' heads, you got to choose the latter and pay the free. But how the fuck can anyone with a brain the size of a peanut... is Mark Robinson listening? Is he listening? How could you come out and fucking say that he dropped the knee? Did he watch any of the footage?
You know what?
I'll tell you why his knee dropped. Because his fucking head was torn that way, and the rest of his body went that way.
So this is actually, we were talking about this guy,
Robinson.
the former umpire on Twitter who says, did the umpire make a bad call?
Oh, yeah.
So he said Hill did drop the knees.
Do you know what the most popular Twitter feed is? Did Mark Robinson make a bad call?
Yeah, there's no question
He's
about that.
got lots of hits, but not enough, if you know what I mean.
But I was going to say, going back to Ginnivan last week too. So Ginnivan had his head torn off. And what I was going to say is the AFL has devised this narrative that everyone is buying into, which is absolute bullshit.
But they're all dropping the knees.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'll go back to the Ginnivan one to begin with. So the defence was, if you remember, he got his head torn off against Sydney, that he leaned forward into the tackle and then he shrugged his arm. And it's like, now this is an absolute fiction that the AFL is selling to all the idiots, and all the idiots are perpetrating it. So if you're in motion, you're picking up the ball. As you come up, you're naturally going to start leaning forward. You don't just stand straight erect. And as you're going to try and gain...
You're not exactly stationary at that point either.
No, that's what I'm saying. As you're moving...
There is a thing called momentum.
Yeah, as you're moving, you will start to... you'll lean forward. And as you're trying to gain acceleration, that's what you do. You lean forward to develop the predisposition to gain that acceleration. So this bullshit like, oh, he leaned into it. It's a natural biomechanic of the fucking body. So for anyone to say, oh, he's perpetrated that to create the contact, it's a total fiction. And the other one, he shrugged his arm. That's what you do when you get tackled. You try and shrug it off. So for people who go, oh, he's only done it to get hit high, it's like, no, actually, that's what you need to do to try and break clear.
Surely it's actually harder to orchestrate faking all that stuff.
In a split second, in a millisecond to decide you're going to do that. So, I mean, Lee Matthews talked about when Ginnivan got hit by fucking Redmond. And Matthews goes, you will make yourself a smaller target to try and bullock your way through. But the AFL's now selling that these are purposely, malicious acts to perpetrate getting hit high. Which is ridiculous, because it's just what you do. Go fucking try. Go out and play football and try and do this, where you're leaning forward, picking up the ball in full motion, where your body goes. Does it go straight up like a jack in the box, or do you actually keep moving forward? And similarly with Hill. So he's grabbed the ball. He might have lowered, minutely, but this thing, that's his prior. So your prior opportunity is, the moment you get the ball, your only alternative is just to get rid of it straight away. Even if you turn it over or whatever. Surely the player should be given a license to go, I've got the ball, I need to have a second to get my bearings. But they go, no, you can't do that. Because if you try to shrug someone off, you try and break through a tackle, or you try and duck or whatever, that's your prior. It's fucking ridiculous, because it should only be your prior if you actually had a clear option where you could have done something. So the AFL's actually created these two narratives, which is just total fucking bullshit. And it's totally fucked up the game, because you can't have what happened, and which has happened to us constantly. Lockie Keefe, he got his head ripped off, he got a free. Hill gets his head ripped off, it's play on. It's you can't have these double standards, they're ridiculous.
No, apparently you can.
And anyone who defends these fucking rules, you really maybe should go out and kick the ball around and see actually the way your body moves in those sort of situations. And I actually noticed lately, they're introducing a lot of, they have rapid fire calls for play-ons. A guy will take a mark or get a free kick and he'll just sort of take a couple of bouncy steps back. It's that's play on. And I recall it happened this game too. I think it was with Noble.
Yeah, he took backward steps and got
called. It was play on. It was
because every player just stands there now. They've never actually moved back to get a run up for a kick.
It's happening more and more, I notice, and it's also happening more where they're calling, that kick hasn't gone long enough to constitute a mark, so they call play on. They'll pick just some really random ones out, and then the next 5 will be much shorter, but they'll just go, they were all marks.
Yeah, no. That was blatant a few times too. Some of these short passes, you hear that, not 15, and then it goes 5 metres. And you go, well, technically it's not 15, but you're not fucking calling it.
No. Did you feel anyone struggled? Because I actually have a name of someone who I believe struggled a bit.
Was it me again?
No.
Oh, you got a different joke this time.
Yeah. It's like you Keith. No.
No. Who? And I'll give you my thought.
I thought Pendles. He got caught. He looked a few times like he believed he had more time than he had. He didn't look in sync with the tempo of the game.
Was there kryptonite on the ground?
Could be. I mean, he wrote him off 5 years ago, so eventually he had to be right. And they took him off. They subbed him off, so that might have just been precautionary. But I thought that was a little bit telling too, to sub him off. I know he missed a week, but he missed a week. It wasn't like he missed 6 weeks and he was coming back.
What was his numbers at the end? You got
no
him
idea.
there? Do you do any research?
I did the research on the coaches' votes.
I thought he was tracking all right possession-wise, though he wasn't struggling
possession-wise,
possession-wise. But he did get caught a couple of times. But...
Yeah, I thought possession-wise, he was still getting the ball in that, but like he just, at times, like I said, the tempo was a little bit above or beyond what he anticipated.
It could also be, I mean, you're heading into the midpoint of the into his 40s, into the midpoint of the season. You're coming up against some weaker teams, starting with Carlton. You're going to have to start resting some of these older boys. You think like Sidey and stuff, although he's only a couple of games off his 300, I think they'll let him get through. And there's nothing to do with their performances or anything, but surely you're going to just rotate them out for maybe a week, give them a week off.
Or you're
coming up to the bye, it's certainly not going to
playing as a sub, so they only get like 20 minutes a game.
And that could have been exactly what the plan was with Penrith. I don't think unless there's an injury, that they'd be activating the sub against some other criteria. Would be that you give X amount of time to this person, and if nobody falls over, then you're going to come on in their place.
Reef McInnes, what do you think? I mean, you get another little cameo in.
No, I mean, I think they tried. Not like they tried, but I think he tried to get himself into the game a fair bit. But he was only on for a quarter, if that. Yeah. He really didn't get a chance to showcase his wares. I mean, it would have been a beauty. He took that big hanger in the goal square, and I think he was pretty close. He did get his hands to it, but just couldn't hold it long enough. But look, he tries. Manfully tries. I'd like to see him get a full game again, and have a good run at it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this is good going away from the game, but just long term. You have Lipinski to come back. You have Cameron to come back. You have Frampton to come back. Who starts missing for these guys?
Yeah.
And then you got potentially McInnes on form, McRae on form, Ed Allen on form. So
I think Ed Allen will be given a shot at it. And Carmichael was another one that's... they're all ripping it up there. And really not going to slodge in with them. But they could potentially come in for that midfield rotation over that middle break of resting. But I think the key one is you can't, and as much as you'd love to be able to, you can't play Cox, Cameron, and Frampton.
And then you got McStay also
in the same side. Look, and I'd love to see Coxie just keep going with the number one ruck mantle, and then the other two in support acts. But neither of them are going to be killing it if you throw them forward or back. Frampton sort of was admirable in his efforts as a defender before he had to go into the ruck, but he was a better ruckman than he was probably a defender. And Cameron...
to be fair though, he didn't get to do a lot of defence. I mean, he killed Tom Lynch against Richmond. He actually got votes for that game in the coaches' award, but it was only a couple of games later we ran out of part-time ruckman, so he had to go forward.
I mean, it's a nice problem to have, but Cameron, I think you're not going to rush him back in. He's going to have to come back, especially coming off the knee. He'd be getting a couple of weeks in the VFL when he's due back, and that must be 3 or 4 weeks away. He must be back at full training, I think.
They said he's a week away from all that, so...
Well, there you go, even better.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Lipinski's the one I think is the walk-in, and the others are playing for limited spots. I mean, McRae and... Finley McRae, that is. And Carmichael are playing for those Mitchell Adams spots. So I don't think they're going to get in unless one of those two is unavailable. And McStay, Frampton, Cox, Cameron, all those talls, there's limited spots, so they're not going to all be played. I think the one thing is how much do they rate that part-time ruckman? Because all the part-time ruckmen have looked really mediocre. And it's a case of do they want Cox and Cameron doing it, or do they want McStay or Johnson doing the part-time role? So that's going to determine some of the way they go forward. I mean, Cox is only a couple of games away from his 100 also.
It's a shame, but you'd sort of think out of everyone out there at the moment that Markov is the obvious sacrificial lamb.
Yep.
And I think he's actually acquitted himself the last couple of weeks. He's got some good pace. He's got a rake and kick with some really good penetration. I think he's doing his job really well.
Yeah, he's got good size also.
He's a lot taller. I think I mentioned it in the rant last week, but when they were warming up and you got to see him in the flesh, he was a lot taller than I thought he'd be.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said I'd probably be dropping, and there's It's not because he's done anything wrong, but I'd probably drop Noble before I drop Mark off at the moment.
Noble will never be dropped.
Yeah, but it's going to come to the point, like, if there's no injuries, that they're going to have to start making some hard choices. So it's interesting what they do, or whether they just sort of say, well, we can't carry Hill, Ginnivan, McCreary, one of them goes, because bringing someone else in gives them a bit more versatility. You know, we said it before, that's why Husker Nerd, I think, keeps his spot, is because they can sort of fling him back forward and do all those other little things. Any final thoughts about this game?
No, other than the fact that it was nice to sit back and not have a stressful game. It was enjoyable to watch.
Did you feel it might become an arm wrestle at any point?
I did say that they better not turn it into an arm wrestle because they were going goal for goal there for a while. I think our dominance in the first half, you didn't want to see it stop.
No.
And you wanted to see him. And it was said a number of times, I think you want sides that when they've got the foot on the throat, they've just got to go for that kill.
Yeah.
And not just back off and take it easy and let the other sides back in. I think it's a habit you want to just... every week I want to go out and destroy everything out there and win by 1,000 points. It'd be wonderful, especially when it comes to those pesky things at the end of the year. What are they called? The finals yeah. Or the grand final.
That would be a nice one.
Yeah, I think it's important to develop that not so much the belief in yourself, but there's nothing wrong with destroying a side if they're weaker. Beat up on them.
In terms of playing, you'd think that's more enjoyable what they did yesterday than stressing over like a last gasp win. I'm not saying, obviously there's other mitigating factors going to determine how the game is going to unfold. But my concern going into that game was just don't make it an arm wrestle for 3 quarters and have to put the foot down in the last quarter. Can we just squash a team like we ended up doing, like we did against Port? And I think sometimes there's games we play where it's just like, where is that intensity? And yesterday it was there from the beginning, but maybe it was because of Bro McCreary's mum speaking to the players beforehand. But
it was good though.
Oh yeah,
I know you hated it.
No, I like it. But I'm just saying, some of these games you look at them and they look flat, they look tired. It takes them a while to get started and all that sort of stuff. But there's been a handful of games where they just look on from the get go. So that seemed the case, and it was good that we did it against a mediocre club or struggling club, because the only other times we've done it have been against the Melbournes and that, where we know from the start we've got to play the whole 100 minutes. Out of curiosity, so talk about a compromise fixture and that. You got 3 clubs in North, West Coast and Hawthorn, which are effectively wins if you play them. Some clubs are getting to play them twice. Is that affecting the, I don't know, you call it integrity of the fixture?
Is there integrity in the fixture?
No, is it affecting the integrity of the fixture?
Look, I think it certainly gives certain sides a leg up. This is the classic thing you see every year, is just all the dud sides that Geelong get to play at home guarantees them a grand final berth, a finals berth through weight of numbers. And in the past, they've always, apart from last year, they always topple over in the finals, because when the real sides come to play, they're just not.
Yeah.
Not so much prepared, but they're just not adequately a match for them. I think you're bringing in the Tasmanian side. That means we're still... I mean, how many sides would you need now to play each other once for a season? You need about 42 sides out there.
Oh, look...
You're never going to play each other twice anymore, because there's just too many, unless they extend the fixture by another 3 months.
You can't do that.
So it's always going to be an imbalance, but there's got to be a better rule in terms of how you build a fixture.
I mean, I've always believed, since they've extended the league, you should only play each other once, because these clubs that get to play shit teams twice, or get to play, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, who's sort of outside a Gold Coast, for example, don't know about this year, but in the past, the first half of the year they're up and running, and the second half, the bottom's fallen out and they're struggling. So you get teams that are sort of playing other sides at a time they've packed away all their stars for surgery, and they're just bloody youth, and they're a lot easier to beat, because these guys, let's play for draft picks now and that sort of shit. So I've always believed everyone should just play each other once, because that's about as equal as you're going to get it. It won't be equal because there'll still be travel and all that sort of stuff, but it's a lot more equal than some teams. I think Essendon plays 2 of those teams twice. So that benefits them no end. If you have 20 teams, then at least if you play each other once, that's going to be 19 games, and that's closer to 22, 23. And then if you do have repeat fixtures, at least you're trying to mitigate it by not having so many, and that potentially you're not going to have a great disparity about who gets to play who twice.
No, it needs to be, apart from the fact you play each other once, it's almost should be, without a joke, it should be a lottery about what determines the draw for the rest of those sides. Because you're going to have sides, everyone wants to play us twice for the gate and all that sort of stuff. We're guaranteed to play Carlton twice, and which is always nice to beat up on a weakling. But you want it to be not so predictable. I think pretty much, don't we generally play the same teams every year twice? It's always
I don't really recall having an easy draw in terms of, people talk about the travel, but in terms of like playing deadbeat teams, I don't really recall us having an advantage in that regard.
No, like even with the draw last year, because we finished the year before that, it was pretty low.
17
and then
last.
We ended up double-arming up against all the top 8 sides. How does that fare?
I don't know. It's this thing that it never seems like that. It's meant to equalise out over years or whatever the case, but it doesn't seem to be. So I think it's a fucking farce, the fixture. And the other thing too is you look at like Hawthorn North and West Coast. Their season's already done. Whatever hope they had coming in, like North had new coach in Clarkson and Hawthorn, had a new coach in Mitchell and all that sort of shit. You got 14 more rounds of this shitness. It's like, what sort of joy would you bring to those clubs by going, well, let's play this another 2 more weeks or whatever the fucking case might be. This is why I think you should abbreviate it, because by the last 4 rounds, you know where everyone's going to sit, pretty much. The teams who might swap like 8th, 9th and all that sort of stuff, well, they're the rats and mice sort of thing. So I think they should devise a fixture which gets more games out of the top end. So like playing a round robin in the final 8 or some shit, which would actually get you higher quality games.
Just on that too, I don't know whether you saw it today, and I haven't confirmed, this came third hand, but apparently we're going to be gifted, I guess, seeing we don't play them all that much anymore, 4 Friday night games in the tail end of the season. So, but as it turns out, we got fucking 2 games at Marvel, playing Brisbane and the Bulldogs, Port Adelaide over there, and Carlton at the G.
Okay.
Now, considering how we're fucking travelling and the crowds that we're pulling, why the fuck would you schedule games at Marvel now?
Well, I thought part of the new president's platform was to say we wouldn't play at Marvel again.
We shouldn't.
Oh, we shouldn't play home games there. That's a fucking joke.
Well, we shouldn't play any game there.
Oh, we'll play away games there.
Play them all the G.
Yeah.
Let's pretend we're Geelong.
Okay. You into hillbillies? And anyway. Rhett Bartlett, son of Richmond legend Kevin Bartlett.
Yes.
Unearthed some footage from the 79 grand final about Harms tapping the ball in at the end of the game.
ABC's camera, which is a slightly different view.
So it's got a little bit of an angle, so it has a better vantage of where the ball's bounced than from the video, which we'll be showing at some point here.
You're going to put it on the big screen?
Yep. It quite clearly shows the ball is in.
Good!
But yet people in that thread have said, no, it's out, it's still in. There's next, yeah.
No, and we've talked about this ad infinitum, about the excuses that we've made the norm about why we don't win these grand finals. And we hang our hats on these moments to justify the reason why we fell short. And I think stuff like this is good because it fucking shows that it was clearly in, and they won that game in that final minute or two, or whatever it is.
No, they were 5 points up. That put them 11 points up.
Oh, sorry. On pure desperation and merit, they wanted to win. And for us to say we lost because of that, it just shows it for the farce it is.
Well, I read Wayne Johnson, Carlton legend, autobiography many years ago, and he talks about that.
Is he a legend or a champion? So I know whether I boo him or not next to my team.
But he talks about, that play, and I think he actually jokes, because I read it like 30 years ago, but he talked about, like, is it in or out? And he goes, it actually doesn't matter, because what you got to look at is Harms kicks the ball, it's a miss kick, it goes in the air, and 2 Collingwood players, they give it up. They give up the chase. Harms desperately chases it and keeps the ball alive. And that's the actual difference, is one guy fought to the death and the other 2 just assumed that, hey, this will go out, so don't worry about chasing it. I mean, this whole thing, like, I've said it before, even if it was 28 feet out, the result is still Carlton won. So what's whinging about it do other than create a victim mentality of, oh, poor us, we would have won if not for excuse. And this is what we constantly do. So there's always like, we would have won if not for... Just accept the fact you weren't good enough to fucking win and get better. When you make excuses, you don't need to get better because it's always about some mitigating circumstance.
Absolutely agree.
Playing Carlton this week at the traditional time on Sunday, 3:20, whatever the fuck it is.
I still love these Sunday afternoon games.
You know why they do it though? Because as we proved against Sydney, we've got 70,000. I don't know what we got against GWS.
32.
Yeah, okay. It's if you played, let's say, I don't know, Carlton, North Melbourne, or the way Carlton's going at the moment, they get a really shit crowd. So they're giving them prime time real estate to try and draw more people in, knowing that you can play Collingwood at these terrible fucking venues and time, not venues, but times, and they're still going to draw quite a crowd. My cousin, many years ago, when Collingwood was getting flunked to all parts of the country, he called Collingwood rent a crowd. That's what the AFL does. Just send Collingwood out, they'll draw the crowd. So we don't have to worry about giving them a good time or good fixture or anything. Fuck you, AFL. Fuck you, Mark Robinson. Not for any reason, but just fuck you.
And John Ralph. Throw him in.
Oh, John Ralph.
He may not have necessarily said anything stupid this week, but it's still early.
It's pretty unlikely that he hasn't done. So, what do you think about this game?
Look, we should win comfortably.
Did you watch the Bulldogs Carlton game?
Yes, I did. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say they choked, but they got into a position where they pegged back a lead. They probably should have run on with the game, and then the Dogs found whatever gear they needed to jump up to and beat them. Which, look, it was enjoyable to watch. I actually worry that's how many games they lost in a row now.
About 19.
What's it going to do to fire them up for this week? I think if they come off a win last week, they would have been a little bit softer. Or maybe then you go in with a bit of confidence. Look, I don't want to be confident. I'm never confident, except that I feel confident.
They haven't put as far. Maybe it's long actually, but they've struggled to put a whole 100 minutes together. And they've had moments or games where they've just looked. I mean, they only kicked one goal in the first half or something or whatever. So they've had periods where they've just looked totally inept. They talk about like you sort of stop Cripps and that stops a big chunk of them. They haven't found a way to make McKay and Curnow work up forward. They went for smaller forward line. That's when
it'll work this week.
Yeah, well, potentially it will, but just sort of saying that they've really struggled to find the chemistry to to work. I'd love to see Collingwood play with the intensity from the opening bounds that they did against GWS, and not have a sort of Adelaide game or the Sydney game where it's like a bit of an arm wrestle and then we have to run over the top of them.
I think you'd have to take whatever sting in, because they've got two reasons to come out primarily that I can see. There's atonement for us beating them,
knocking them out of the finals,
knocking them out last year, and there's also their performances last week. They've got two things that they should be absolutely revved up to the moon to come out firing with. And I think you've got to nip that in the bud as quickly as you possibly can. Bang on the first 28 goals before they score and put it to rest.
So what's your tip?
Carlton by 10 goals.
I'll go Collingwood by 46 points.
I'd take that. Coxie's number.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I sincerely hope that we go out and we have another comfortable victory. Well, it's going to be a big game. It's a sellout. There's going to be, I think, 3 Carlton supporters apparently going to they're going to stay for the whole thing. They said they're going to get themselves chained to the chairs to stop themselves from leaving. But
you got to give them credit, because a couple of weeks ago against Brisbane, they played that abysmal third quarter and everyone left, and they addressed that by playing a really good third quarter against Bulldogs and keeping everyone there.
And then the players
left. Yeah. So. Anyway,
But you see the crowd, I thought it was pretty, I don't know what the number was because they played at Marvel against the Dogs. It wasn't, I reckon it was only about maybe half to 3/4 full. By 10 minutes to go, it was pretty empty.
Yeah.
Dogs aren't a massively drawn club, but I would have thought the Blues, I think they've disenfranchised their supporter base a little bit.
That's a shame.
Be interested to see, I mean, I said it's apparently a sellout this weekend. Does that mean predominantly there's going to be a lot of us and a few of them? It'd be an interesting dynamic in the crowd if that's the case, because I can't remember too many times where we've probably outnumbered them supporter-wise.
The one thing I will say, and this is what I've really fucking loved about McRae, is just that constant smashing of typical Collingwood hoodoos and stuff like that. Last year beating Carlton twice, knocking him out of the finals. Typically un-Collingwood things. So he approaches things, which I think previous coaches like Buckley, Shaw, even Matthews tried to demythologise some of the Collingwood about Collingwood, whereas he seems to be a lot more successful doing it. So to see if we could actually beat Carlton and like beat them comfortably, it would be like, fuck, this is not the Collingwood we know. You know, so that's what I really want to see. I just want to continue seeing the Collingwood that we don't know, because I saw the other one for about 50 years and it shitted me to tears. Anyway, any final thoughts?
No, that'll do. Just hit the pause button. Let's move on.
Okay, later.
Catch. That's it. You've fucked it. They're going to win.